Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into a topic that's reshaping how European enterprises operate. AI agents for enterprise automation and EU compliance heading into 2026. Sam, we're going to be exploring AI agents, cost optimization strategies, and navigating the regulatory landscape that's evolved dramatically over the past year. This feels like a crucial moment for organizations to get this right.
Absolutely, Alex. And what's fascinating is that 2026 isn't some distant future anymore. It's essentially here. The EU AI Act reached full enforcement in January 2026, which fundamentally changes the game for enterprises. We're no longer in a fragmented regulatory environment where different member states can play by different rules. That consolidation is either a competitive advantage or a serious liability depending on how prepared you are.
That's a great point. So let's start with the basics for our listeners who might be newer to this concept. What exactly is an AI agent, and how does it differ from the automation we've been doing for years with RPA and traditional tools?
Think of it this way. Traditional RPA is like a robot following a very rigid recipe. You tell it, open this file, extract this data, move it here, and you're done. It executes perfectly, but it can't adapt when something unexpected happens. AI agents, by contrast, are more like hiring an intelligent assistant who understands context, can make judgment calls, and learns from experience. They use large language models to reason through ambiguous situations, make decisions, and then execute actions across your enterprise systems.
So the key difference is autonomy and adaptability. An AI agent doesn't just follow a script, it actually thinks about what needs to be done. That opens up some interesting possibilities, but also some real challenges when it comes to compliance and control.
Exactly. And that's where the EU AI Act becomes critical. When your agent is making autonomous decisions, especially in high-risk domains like financial reconciliation or hiring, regulators want transparency, documentation, and auditability. You can't just say the AI decided and leave it at that. You need to explain the reasoning.
Let's talk about the market dynamics driving all of this. The blog mentions that we're seeing significant investment momentum in European AI startups. What's the actual size of opportunity we're talking about here?
The numbers are staggering. In 2025-2026, we saw seed-stage AI companies attract over $1.03 billion in funding globally, with European startups capturing a meaningful slice of that. But zoom out further. Goldman Sachs is projecting the generative AI market will create $2.4 trillion in economic value by 2030, with 65% of those gains coming from enterprise automation. That's the market signal. Organizations that deploy AI agents effectively aren't just optimizing costs. They're positioning themselves to capture a massive share of value creation.
And McKinsey's data showed that 55% of enterprises have already adopted at least one generative AI capability. So this isn't theoretical anymore. It's happening right now. But I imagine there's a huge variance in how well executed these deployments are, especially when it comes to compliance and cost management.
You've hit on something critical. Adoption is one thing. Strategic, compliant, cost-optimized deployment is another entirely. Many organizations are rushing to implement agents without thinking through their FinOps strategy. That's your financial operations approach to cloud and AI spending. You can easily spin up an expensive model for every task, but that's not scalable.
Let's dig into that cost optimization angle because I think a lot of our listeners are under pressure to do more with less in 2026. How do you actually optimize costs when you're deploying AI agents across your enterprise?
First, you need visibility. Most enterprises don't know how much they're actually spending on AI. It's scattered across different cloud providers, different models, different use cases. Step 1 is implement proper cost tracking and tagging so you can see where your money is going. Step 2 is match the right model to the right task. You don't need GPT-4 level intelligence for every workflow. A smaller, cheaper model might be perfectly adequate for routine document classification, while you reserve expensive models for complex reasoning tasks.
So it's about being strategic with model selection, not just picking the most powerful option. That makes sense. And then there's the question of where those models come from. Sovereign models versus US-based models. That's where Mistral AI and the European alternatives enter the picture.
Right. Mistral and other European models solve multiple problems simultaneously. First, they keep your data within the EU, which addresses both regulatory compliance and geopolitical risk concerns. Second, they're often more cost-effective than US alternatives. Third, and this is subtle but important, they're optimized for European languages and contexts. A model trained primarily on English data might struggle with German financial documents or French legal terminology. Mistral was specifically built with European enterprises in mind.
That's a really smart observation. Now let's talk about the compliance piece, the EU AI Act. For a CTO or enterprise leader listening to this, what are the immediate actions they need to take in 2026?
First, classify your AI agents by risk level. The EU Act creates a tiered system: prohibited AI, illegal; high-risk AI, requires strict documentation and testing; limited risk AI, requires transparency; and minimal risk AI can proceed with best practices. Financial reconciliation, high risk; content moderation, high risk; recommending products to customers, limited risk. You need to categorize your use cases accurately because the compliance burden scales dramatically with risk classification.
So risk classification is foundational. What comes after that?
Documentation. For high-risk systems, you need audit trails showing how your AI agent made decisions, what data it used, whether it flagged uncertainty, and how humans overrode it when necessary. You need testing protocols that demonstrate the system works fairly across different populations and edge cases. And you need a governance structure, essentially someone accountable when things go wrong. It's not trivial, but organizations that get this right today gain massive competitive advantage because their compliant infrastructure becomes a moat against enforcement actions.
That's a really compelling point. Compliance as competitive advantage, not just a cost center. Let me ask you about real-world implementation. What are some concrete enterprise use cases where AI agents are delivering immediate value?
Financial reconciliation is a classic one. You have transactions coming in from dozens of sources, vendors, customers, banks, and they're often mismatched or unclear. Traditionally, a human accountant spends hours manually investigating. An AI agent can autonomously reconcile 80–90% of transactions in seconds, flag the anomalies for human review, and suggest corrective actions. That's not just speed. That's freeing expensive talent to do strategic work instead of rote data matching.
And supply chain is another one, right? Monitoring inventory, predicting shortages, optimizing orders.
Exactly. An AI agent monitoring your supply chain can consume data from your ERP system, supplier databases, weather forecasts, shipping tracking, and market demand signals. It then makes autonomous decisions. We need to reorder this component now because delivery times are extending and demand is rising. Instead of waiting for a quarterly planning meeting, decisions happen in real time. The cost savings can be enormous: reduced stockouts, lower carrying costs, faster response to disruptions.
HR and talent operations, too. Resume screening, initial candidate assessment.
That's a high-risk application under the EU AI Act because hiring decisions can discriminate, so you need to be careful. But yes, AI agents can absolutely screen resumes, identify candidates matching technical criteria, and flag for human review. The key is that humans remain in the loop for final decisions, and you're testing the system to ensure it doesn't systematically disadvantage protected groups.
So the theme across all these use cases is human-AI collaboration, not replacement. The agent handles the high-volume, routine cognitive work, and humans focus on judgment, strategy, and exceptions. That's probably the healthiest model.
Absolutely. And it's also more compliant. The EU Act emphasizes human oversight for high-risk systems. Compliance and good business practice align here. You want humans accountable for important decisions anyway. It creates better outcomes and protects the organization legally.
Let's bring this back to the bigger strategic question. If you're a European enterprise in early 2026, what's your roadmap for AI agent deployment? Should everyone be doing this?
Not everyone should be rushing in, but everyone should have a plan. If you're in a high labor cost industry with repetitive processes, finance, supply chain, customer service, HR, the ROI case is compelling. If you're a small startup with 5 employees, maybe you have different priorities. But for mid-market and enterprise organizations, AI agents are becoming table stakes. The question is whether you deploy strategically and compliantly or reactively when you're behind competitors.
So the cost-benefit math favors action, but the execution matters tremendously.
Exactly. And here's what I'd add. Start small, learn quickly. Pick one high-impact use case, maybe financial reconciliation if you're finance-heavy, or supply chain optimization if you're in manufacturing. Build it properly with compliance in mind, measure the cost savings, and then scale. Don't try to automate everything at once. That's how you end up with expensive mistakes and no learning.
That's solid practical advice. What about the talent question? Does deploying AI agents mean your team needs AI PhDs and machine learning engineers?
Not necessarily. Modern AI agent platforms abstract away a lot of the complexity. You need some technical depth, someone who understands APIs, data pipelines, and system integration. And you definitely need governance expertise, someone who understands compliance, data governance, and risk. But you don't need to hire a team of ML researchers. What you do need is curiosity, attention to detail, and commitment to testing and monitoring outcomes.
So it's achievable for organizations with solid technical teams, even if they don't have deep AI expertise. That's encouraging. As we wrap up, Sam, what's the one thing you'd tell every enterprise leader listening to this?
Don't treat AI compliance as a burden to grudgingly comply with. The EU AI Act creates a playground where compliant organizations can innovate faster and operate across markets without regulatory risk, while non-compliant competitors face enforcement actions and penalties. Compliance is your competitive advantage. Build it in from day one, and you'll move faster, not slower.
That's a great reframe. Compliance as advantage, not constraint. Listeners, if you want to dive deeper into the technical architecture of AI agents, cost optimization strategies, and specific guidance on EU compliance in 2026, head over to etherlink.ai and find the full article. We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's so much more detail in the comprehensive guide. Sam, thanks for breaking this down so clearly.
Thanks, Alex. It's an exciting time for European enterprises willing to get this right. The opportunity is real, and the framework for doing it responsibly is finally in place.
Absolutely. Thanks to our listeners for joining us on EtherLink AI Insights. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into AI strategy, implementation, and the intersection of technology and business. Until then, keep pushing forward.